Hello everyone, I'm Whitney Farmer. I'm glad to be back in front of you again today. Welcome again to Grace's free TOEFL test prep for you. Today we're going to be discussing something that might apply to some of you. It might not apply to all of you, however, but I think that it might be very valuable to you. So what we're going to do to begin, Mark, next slide please. I want to discuss with you the California Community College System. And there's a couple of reasons why I want to do that. And some of you are familiar with it, some of you are not. Again, it might not apply to you, but it might apply to you or to others in your family, particularly to your children. So let me describe to you the community college system. Next slide, please, when you have an opportunity. California community colleges have a more recent development which is going to be of interest if you have a concern about tuition. It might apply to you, but it might not. But very recently, Governor Gavin Newsom in California signed a bill that allows for, under certain circumstances, students to go to school to the California community college system for no tuition. It's not free college, but there is no tuition. Those who attend still would have the cost of, their books, their parking, their housing, etc., but the tuition would be waived. That fee is $46 per credit, and it can add up for a family, especially if you have multiple children who are planning on attending school. On your screen, there is a slide of an article which describes this occurrence, but I also sent to you on the WhatsApp groups the link to this article, which might provide you with more in-depth information. Mark, next slide, please. The California Community College System, to give you an overview. It is a post-secondary education system. It is the second largest system in the United States. It consists of 73 different districts, but a total of 115 different campuses. Why that's important, perhaps, to you is because of local access. Those of you who are, again, concerned about the costs of going to college, you would be able to perhaps remain in the family home and yet still pursue your higher education. There are many different types of degrees that are offered through the college. The colleges, some are also even online. You can take classes online, which would completely free you up from basically the costs of parking, etc., and transportation costs, which can be significant for young families. The community college system has a couple of very interesting aspects to it. Many people take advantage of the education there for vocational training, vocational certification, workforce development, but it also has the ability to take care of, through a particular kind of a degree, which is called an Associate of Arts transfer degree or Associate of Science transfer degree. It can take care of the first 2 years of general requirements to many post-secondary institutions. Now what that means is if you or someone in your family is wanting to pursue a 4-year college degree in America, or in California rather, the first 2 years could be conducted at one of the community colleges, and then that degree can transfer to the last 2 years to more specialized, major concentrated classes for a 4-year degree. So, for example, if you take the first 2 years and get your Associate of Arts degree, transfer degree, and you want to go to CSU Long Beach, you can do that. There is actually a guarantee to the CSU system. The CSU system in California is the largest public higher education system in the United States, and they have many different courses of study and that you can go towards. And so what happens is, if, again, as an example, if you take the first 2 years at a community college, you can transfer. There's a guarantee if you have that particular type of degree through the community colleges here in California. you're guaranteed admission to the CSU system of institutions. Now, the particular campus you might want to go to might not have capacity. It might be at capacity, in which case you might be redirected to another campus. Also, though, in some of the disciplines, there might be additional requirements for admission into that campus's major coursework. For example, in the fine arts, even though you have your transfer degree, you might have to go through an audition to be able to admit it into the major for the CSU campus. Also, though, if you're involved in STEM types of education, STEM is science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. Those particular major coursework concentrations on a post-secondary level might also have additional admission requirements. But generally, think about this as an option for either you or for your family, your kids who are living in the house, right? So you come to, say, for example, California, you start a family, you have children who grow up within the system and they want to go to college, you're trying to figure it out, maybe you have multiple children, and it can be incredibly expensive. I don't know if some of you have heard about in the United States about these scandals where parents have been trying to buy access to different post-secondary or to different higher education institutions, and they've been spending an incredible amount of money to get preferential illicit admissions, and then they, on top of that, once they're admitted, they would be paying additional money. It's astronomically expensive in some circumstances. So what I'm trying to do is suggest to you a way that you might be able to make it more affordable. I'm a huge fan of higher education. I am a huge advocate whenever and wherever possible to pursue higher education, and actually never to stop, to be able to, acquire a degree and close on that, get that piece of paper, but then also to continuously intellectually challenge ourselves. And the community colleges provide access on a local level, and so therefore they are wonderful tools to be able to continue our education and development throughout our lives. So when it comes to the community colleges, there are some things you'll need to know about, though. When your child or you are going to be interested in pursuing this, at the high schools, there are college counselors that can provide you with very specific, detailed instructions on how to make this happen for you successfully. There also, at the different colleges, there is an admissions office, and there are people there who can be wonderful resources to you. You can come onto a campus and you can schedule a tour, oftentimes provided by a student who is a native speaker of your language if you don't feel confident yet in your English skills. So you can enjoy getting an understanding of the campus that might be very close to where you live now. And you or someone in your family can start their education without having to move to another location, establish another housing expense, transportation costs, etc. That can make things much more affordable. If you have a $46 per unit cost for a community college in California, a full-time credit load is going to run you roughly about $1,300 for each semester or each quarter. If you add housing onto that, and books and transportation costs, etc., you might end up having a cost to go to a community college. If you're not going to be doing one locally, you might have a cost of about $25,000 to $30,000 a year. If you're figuring in, I'm sorry, not a community college, but just college in general, if the CSU system, for example. If you're looking at the UC system, which is another public higher education system within California State, the cost goes upwards nearly to $50,000. So if you as a family are looking at 4 years of college for one of your children, say, just assuming like to the UC system as an example, and each one of those years calculating a different place that they're going to be living, housing, books, and tuition, each one of those years is going to run roughly $50,000. So you're looking at about $200,000 over 4 years that a family is going to have to figure out how to make that work. And if you have multiple children, then what if you have 4 kids, all of them want to go to college? That can become prohibitively expensive. And that is a heartbreak, and it's not necessary. So I want you to investigate community colleges, all right? If you have a student who doesn't have to travel to college but can stay local and still live in the family home, who also can be a help to you as a family, right? The first 2 years, instead of spending this amount of money, this $50,000, doing the first 2 years at home, right? So you're looking at $1,300 roughly, per quarter or per semester to be a student, saving on housing expenses. You still will have your book fees, but you also can even do online classes, all right? It can make a huge difference for a family, and it can make it realistic for those within your circle to be able to pursue higher education. Now, the key is to understand how it can be done in a way that not only is financially feasible, but academically provides you with the correct classes to take to articulate smoothly between the college and the next 2 years, the final 2 years of major coursework. The term that you'll hear oftentimes in higher education is articulation. So you can take 2 years of classes, but those classes may or may not be considered equivalent scholastically to the higher education equivalency classes in the other school, the other university or college that you're thinking of finishing the degree in. So that conversation is very important to have early on before you start the coursework, because you don't want to take classes that aren't going to count. It can be wonderful to, obviously be intellectually stimulated, but you also want to have your time count and not have to retake classes or extend the time that you're going to school. I think everyone who's been to, or not everyone, but a number of people that I am familiar with have gone through mistakes when it comes to pursuing their degrees. One woman, actually a sister of mine, when she was pursuing her first degree, she took a break in her time and then went to another school. And that school didn't count all of the credits that she had taken in the school previously. And so then she was catching up on those credits and taking classes that she'd actually already had before. But those two schools hadn't communicated with each other to make sure that it was equivalent articulation of the content. So this school wasn't counting the credit that she'd already earned. So as she's pursuing this, some of her other classes, one of the requirements of this other school was that the classes that you take, the information that you've been exposed to, as we know, can change over time. So the classes to count could not be a certain age, right? So there had to be, I think it was 4 years or 7 years. You had to have had the class earlier than 7 years for it to count at the newest place. So she was scrambling and ended up having to take extra classwork to be able to finish up her degree, close it out, and succeed. So that's what happened with her as an example. For myself, I ended up going, through my master's degree. I started out in a four-year school, but then I did go back and forth to the local community college, because as I was doing my studies, sometimes the classes that I wanted to take didn't happen in the right time period that I had available, and I wanted to make sure that I was not left without a full-time class load. And so what I did is I would go back and forth between the community college as well as the university, making sure that I had a conversation with admissions that there was equivalency or articulation of those classes. So if I took the class, it would count. The last time I had to do that was actually when I was in grad school going for my business degree. I needed to have an upper division calculus class. And it was not offered at the time I needed it because I was taking evening school. I was working full-time during the day, And so what I did is I was actually able to get on a community college a one-on-one class with a retired Marine sergeant that my university said they would take his grade on me in calculus as equivalent for what they wanted to have. So it was just me and this ex-Marine working on a board for like an hour at a time, and it was flexible because of his schedule, so it was able to work around my work schedule as well. It ended up being exactly what I needed to have happen for me, and I ended up being able to get my degree, my master's degree, because of that flexibility. That requires the different schools to have had a conversation about articulation, and you want to make sure that that happens so you don't waste time taking classes that are not going to count. All right? Okay, Mark, please. This is a map. Again, there are 115 different campuses in the California Community College system, including an online campus, which is obviously not included on this. But you'll see on the map here, which I will include this slide presentation onto our different platforms, you will see that the campuses are concentrated in areas where there is a population concentration, of course. And again, that does provide an opportunity for those of you who want to pursue this, or those in your family who want to pursue it, to remain in the family home, save on your housing costs, and still pursue college education for much, much less cost to you as a family. Next, please. Then also, again, there are this new program of free tuition in California. It may apply to you, but it may not. Even if it doesn't apply to you, I want you seriously to investigate the community college system here. There are other places where you are too, whatever state you're in. If you've already arrived in the United States, seriously investigate the community college system, because they all have a vested interest in being part of this investment in the human infrastructure in this country. And this is a movement that's happening in many states, California being one of them. I'm familiar with California, so that's why I'm discussing it, but that doesn't mean that California is the only one that does provide free tuition on a community college level. So do some research on this. You might be thrilled at what you find out. So first of all, in California, the free tuition does have some stipulations on it. It is for graduating seniors from California high schools who are accepted into any of the 115 community colleges. They are eligible for 2 free years of tuition. That was just signed into law with our Governor Gavin Newsom. He just signed the budget funding to be able to have that happen. And to qualify, they must be first-time, full-time students. And what that means in California is that they're taking a minimum class load of 12 units per semester or quarter. I think it's 15 a quarter or 12 a semester, okay? And again, there already is 1 year of free tuition in the state, but this is now extending it, so you actually can get your AA transfer or your AS transfer degree for free in California state. So you wouldn't have your first 2 years of college to pay for. Yeah? Good idea, right? Next, please. So there is a controversy about this, though, and I want to give you both sides, and you can have an informed decision regarding this. First of all, FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. Wherever you're applying to, if they are accredited, then you have the opportunity, if they receive federal funding in any way, then they have the opportunity of providing financial aid to their students. There is a uniform application for that. Even though it's a state college or a state university, anyone who's interested in pursuing federal grants or federal loans to assist them with their education does a uniform application. That application comes out on October of the previous year of when they want to go to school. So let's say if you just started school, actually you want to start school next year, right? You want to start school, whether it's the college system or university, actually anywhere in the nation that receives federal funding, that application for next fall semester, so fall 2020, is going to first be available online for you to complete October 1st of this year. So in about 3 weeks, that application will be available for you to complete. You can have that application submitted online up through June 30th of next year. So let's say you want to go to school in September of next year, and you'll need funding to assist you with that. You have until June 30th of next year to be able to do that. So a couple of months before you might actually be starting. However, I do not recommend that at all, waiting that long. And the reason is, if you wait too long, the funds can be depleted. So let's say in June 1st of next year, you make application, and the government says, congratulations, you're eligible for all this financial aid. But they'll say, unfortunately, we have no more funding available, because it is first come, first serve. So what I strongly recommend, if you have any ability at all to do this, October 1st is when these applications can first be submitted online. I would start your application the beginning of the time as opposed to waiting till the end, because if you're going to need, and you don't have to accept it, but if you're going to need it, you want it to be in the system to be able to do so. Now what will happen with that application is the government will say, okay, this is what we have available for you. There's grants available, and those are the first to be depleted. Those do not have to be paid back, all right? Then there also is a pool of investor money that are called guaranteed student loans, and those come and assist with the shortfall that might be there if there are grants are depleted, all right? So what will happen is they'll say, you have a grant available. If you want to go to school, this is how much it is. But based on calculations of where you want to go and other expenses, not just tuition, it also calculates in books, housing, etc. You may need more money, and if so, we also can say that you can have this student loan available to you. Now, student loans, typically they are a lower interest rate, depending on which kind it is. Some of them do not even start accruing interest until after you complete your schooling, or if you quit school, right? 6 months after that, then you're going to start to have to make payments. So just to let you know, the loans that are available through FAFSA are different than the grants, okay? Now, why is there a controversy about this? Here it is. The community college system, as part of this new second year of determination for free tuition, they specified that those who are participating don't only need to be a student who's graduated from a California high school and is going to be going full-time to school in one of the community colleges. They also have to have completed the FAFSA form as part of their eligibility. There are some of the schools within the community college network who are saying, no, we're not going to participate in that. And the reason is there's a lot of concern, I think it's appropriate concern, about people accruing unnecessary debt to pursue higher education. There were some changes in banking laws and procedures that happened a few years ago that led to huge student loan problems, huge student loan defaults. And it had to do also with a number of for-profit entities coming into higher education and not providing education that was needed. So students were going to school, graduating with degrees that were not getting them jobs. They couldn't work for a higher wage, and now their student loans are hitting them for a higher rate, and they're not able to pay them back, and they're defaulting. It's a problem. It's a significant problem that actually right now in the political world there's a lot of discussion on how to correct that. But this is different. The FAFSA is different, all right? You don't have to accept a debt offer, a loan offer, but you have to be in the system to be able to be granted free tuition to the college system, all right? But they also might offer you simply a grant. But whatever is the offer that's made to you, you don't have to accept it. What is the specification in the new legislation in California is merely that you have done the application and submitted it, all right? Now, in saying that, that means that you will be included in a database, and your information will be included in a database. And this is another concern that some people do have. there are citizenship questions that are asked in the federal form. A student who is eligible for financial aid does not have to have parents who are U.S. citizens or even permanent residents. The student themselves does not have to have, the parent's status doesn't affect the student in that manner, but that information will be included in this application. So it may or may not be something that you want to participate in. That being said, so therefore, if the student loan on the FAFSA, or if the free tuition that's granted through this FAFSA application, if it's not for you, don't worry about it. You still can go to college. And at $46 a credit, it's still a great bargain. Okay? All right. Next, please. So again, October 1st is going to be a big deal. All right. Again, you do not require the FAFSA application does not require you to accept this federal loans or grants, but it does allow your eligibility to be determined and on file. I just want to emphasize that again. All right. Next, please. I want to compare California community colleges to other higher education institutions so you have an understanding of the differences between them and why they might benefit you. Our class is TOEFL, right? One thing that I'm encountering that you've heard discussed, of course, is people wanting to make sure their scores are higher. A lot of those conversations have to do with acquiring reciprocal certification within professions, whether it's pharmacy or what have you. However, some of you want to actually pursue education, and all of you are talking about how do I get the score I need to get to be able to enter into this new opportunity that I'm seeking. The interesting, great thing about the community colleges in California is the TOEFL that's required for admission through the system is only a score of 45. You only have to score 45 on the TOEFL to gain admission to the community colleges in California. And also, some of them will allow some conditional admissions, and you need to talk to them about this, but they'll allow conditional admissions that will allow you to enter into their system and take intensive English language classes, again, for a bargain price. And some of them are even offering, through their workforce development arm, free classes. So you're in their system, a student with a conditional status, but you're in the system, able to pursue the education, sometimes even for free, without even going through the FAFSA application. All right, so if you want to start college in California, you're concerned about your TOEFL score, the first 2 years in California, whether it's the CSU system or the UC system, the first 2 years, because it's a liberal arts education, those are called General University Requirements anyway, GURs. They are a little bit of a sampling of many different types of disciplines to give the student an understanding of many different types of intellectual pursuits so that they can, with more full information, decide on what they want to seek in their higher education. So in California, in the liberal arts systems, which are the CSU system, which is the largest in the United States, and the UC system, which contains, the UC system is considered the highest quality public higher education system in the United States. The UC system sets standards that many other schools, whether they are public or private, they look to the UC system to set the standard, to set the pace, all right? Both of those systems, first 2 years, are general university requirements. You might as well take those at a community college, save a lot of money, $50,000 a year, possibly all in if you're talking about housing, transportation, tuition, books, etc., between the two, going to UC for the first 2 years compared to a community college. And there is articulation with the community colleges to the UC system as well. But check with your college counselors at your high schools or with the school that you want to transfer to as well, just to make sure. But I think it's a great way to go. And the TOEFL, if you don't have the TOEFL to enter into the UC system, you might have the TOEFL score now to enter into the community college system. Make sense? Okay. Next, please. So that's why I'm talking about that in this class, because it can be a way to start your education without having to wait, okay? So with this new legislation that's come through, there's an estimation that there are going to be 33,000 new students that are going to be eligible for this program. Another 33,000. It might end up even being more, but I think it's terrific. You'll sometimes hear discussion about, how do I put this? It gets political. People will talk about whether something is an entitlement or whether it's shouldn't be given because whatever. Higher education throughout time, there's a demonstration of various countries and civilizations throughout time. If there is an investment in higher education, it's not a cost, it's an investment. It increases the intellectual capacity of the population, and the payoff on that is improved economic activity because there is new innovation available, a more skilled workforce, therefore more opportunities. What happens for an individual when they improve their quality of life through education happens on a grand scale, on a magnum scale with a country. So if you look at the numbers when it comes to higher education that's subsidized, like we're talking about here, it actually ends up being like an infrastructure investment for a country. Same as if you invest in bridges and roads and telecommunications and et cetera. It can be a very, very profitable activity for a country to participate in. Currently, again, the tuition at the community colleges is $46 per unit, which is about $1,380 a year for a full-time student, because a full-time credit load is 12 credits at a community college for the semester system. Okay, next please. Okay, the truth is that tuition fees represent only 25 to 29% of the cost of attending one of the 23 Cal State schools, the CSU system. And at the UC's 9 campuses, so the California State system has 23 campuses, UC system has 9. They average a bit more, about 29% of the total cost. So roughly between 25 and 30% of the cost is going to be tuitions. Next, please. Housing expenses, to give you an idea, within the Cal State system, if you're going through their housing services to procure accommodations during the academic year, that's going to run roughly $10,600 annually at Fresno State as an example, to $17,800 at San Diego State, which is another one of the schools within the CSU system. And then total cost, if you're figuring in books and everything, etc., Stanislaus State, as an example of one of the schools, run about $24,900, so $25,000. Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is going to run you close to $30,000 all in, right? UC, all in, total cost is going to run you about $49,000, okay? So just to give you an understanding, all right? So 2 systems, multiple opportunities. Next, please. This information I actually received as a result of a column that was written by George Skelton, who is a political columnist at the Los Angeles Times. I thought it was a very concise analysis of the numbers linked to this type of activity. And this columnist, I wouldn't say has a political bias one way or the other. I thought it was very pertinent how the information that he provided that really shows that it's a good idea in terms of legislation to do this for the state. So anyway, so this is his information. It's going to be on the PowerPoint slideshow that I'll be posting also onto our WhatsApp. Okay, next please. Now I want to go a little bit more in depth to what is the associate degree for transfer, and this is important, all right? So it's called a degree with a guarantee. If you go through this, if you don't have the TOEFL score to go into the CSU system or to the UC system, but you have gotten a score of 45, which is what's necessary for admission to the California Community College system, right? Start your classes. You might even be able to get free tuition, but if you don't, it's $1,300, $1,400 a year for tuition, and then you calculate in your books. But if you're still living close to home, you don't have to worry about college housing, dorm housing, and your transportation costs can be minimized, so that's what you're looking at. For 2 years, if you follow a very specific coursework that the admissions department will show you what it needs to be for your AA transfer degree or your AS transfer degree. What happens is it's called a degree with a guarantee. When you earn the associate degree for transfer and you meet those certain requirements, you will be guaranteed admission to the CSU system. Now, some of the campuses you want to go to might be at capacity and you might have a deferred admission, or you might be redirected to another campus. And there also might be within your major that you want to study additional requirements for admission to your major, again using fine arts, which would require an audition as an example, or to submit paintings, etc. So some sort of a different type of admission requirement, all right? But it is a degree with a promise. And also within the UC system, they also, depending on some certain stipulations, they also view it as a degree that will take care of the first 2 years of general university requirements, which means theoretically you can enter into the UC system and begin only in your coursework for your major concentration of study, all right? Now this doesn't calculate in also if you want to pursue a minor or if you want to go through honors program. When I did my undergrad, I did my general university requirement coursework of 2 years, bouncing back and forth between a community college and the university. But then I also pursued my major, which had additional requirements for me that I had to be admitted into the major. Plus I did the honors program, which was additional coursework. And I also took a French minor. So I had additional coursework as well, all right? So those are not stipulated, are not part of this conversation. Just wanted to let you know, okay? Next, please. Now, I just took a screenshot. I typed in onto my phone other places where there is free tuition. This is not an exhaustive list. I just want, and you notice here on your screen on the slide, it says there are more items. There are so many places that have free college tuition in America now, all right? I want you to have that conversation and begin to investigate this seriously as an opportunity, regardless of your age. There are some important stipulations, however. First of all, geography is important, all right? But also accreditation is important. And that's why I kind of scribbled a circle around accredited colleges, all right? One of the problems that occurred in the student loan crisis that I referred to a little while ago in America was that a lot of students were diligently pursuing their education in these institutions, in these colleges and universities that were in trouble with accreditation organizations. So the universities didn't do, or the colleges didn't do their fiduciary responsibility. They didn't handle themselves in a workmanlike way. The students were diligent. They were going to school. They were taking the classes. They were, paying for the coursework. They were taking out loans to pay for the coursework. And then the colleges were losing their accreditation, or they weren't accredited. So someone would want to get a degree as a radiology tech, for example. And they would not, even though they got the degree, because their institution either hadn't secured their accreditation or had lost it, and might even be a for-profit system instead of a not-for-profit or a public system, that student would have a degree that is worthless and a huge debt. It's a crisis that we still are not out of. And we're working on legislation now on a federal level to hopefully, that's a big political conversation that we're facing right now. So the reason I circled that accreditation is that you need to make sure the place you're going to go to, even if it has free tuition, you want to make sure that it is a quality institution, that they have submitted to peer review within their various specializations, that they have done what they are supposed to do when it comes to honoring the students' commitment to them, and that they have approached things in a scholarly, workmanlike manner and done what's necessary to receive accreditation, right? In California, one of the biggest accrediting agencies for the privates is called AICCU. So within that system, that's for the private colleges and universities, and you've got Stanford, and Pepperdine and all these ones. And what they do is, to be accredited, they make sure that they comply with the scholastic peer review and just a number of different categories. And so they're accredited. So if you get a degree from those schools in in whatever specialization, then theoretically you'd be able to walk into a pharmacy or into an engineering firm and say, I have a degree from this place. And then they'll be able to say, that means it's quality. So therefore, you might be a very positive candidate for us. And so therefore, the conversation will continue. So accrediting is very important. So wherever you're going to be, whether it's in California or any other place in the United States, look into the quality of the school. Yes, they're looking at you as a student, but you need to also look at them to make sure that they are going to fulfill your needs as a student. All right? Okay. Next, please. Articulation. I've used that word a few times, and I wanted to make sure you understand why that word is used in education. And it's in this conversation, it's very important. Just those of you who are involved in the science, like, anatomy and physiology, we talk about articulation of joints. So you have two parts here, and the articulation of this joint, that's where the point where they attach. This is where two different objects are attached and function as a whole. That's the mental image I want you to have when it comes to articulation of the coursework with the community colleges into the CSU or the UC system. There is a point where they have to meet and they have to function together. With the degree with a promise, the AA transfer degrees, or the AS transfer degrees within the community college system, that promise means that these colleges have spoken to these universities and they've compared their coursework, their syllabi, their specifications of what's covered in the classes, and they've looked at them and they say, okay, you want us to look at your course in anatomy and physiology and have it be comparable. So once your student comes here, they won't have to take it. They look at the coursework and they say, yes, agree, it's the same, it's an equivalent. We'll articulate it, we'll connect that point. Or English composition is a common one, all right? So whatever is going, your algebra 2 or your calculus or whatever. So there is an examination of the syllabi of these classes by the higher institution, which is the 4-year college, and they'll say, we look at it and we agree that it's the same content, and so therefore we're going to count your credits that you take in this class as the same as if you took it here, even though you didn't. So once that student enters here, they have that articulation, so they just continue on with their education seamlessly. It's very important when you're doing this kind of thing. And sometimes a student will start with, they'll take 1 year of community college, then they'll transfer into the UC or the CSU system. In that case, there is not a promise that they'll be admitted, all right? Then they're going to be in the regular competitive pool. Some of their classes may count, some of them may not. If they do that transfer degree and they close that gap, they finish it and they get that piece of paper, that again is where they have that added ability. So articulation on that point. What happens is, again, there's a scholarly investigation of the syllabi of both classes, verifying the content is equivalent, and then therefore the coursework, the credits that are gained in these are counted as the same for the next place. Okay, that's important. All right, so homework. Again, I need to tell you again, and I think you can tell, I hope that what we talked about today is actually very useful to you. There are a number of you who are not going to college again, but your children will, all right? So I hope that this actually will give you some things to think about that might apply to your entire families. And how TOEFL fits into that is that the community colleges have a much lower requirement to gain admission, all right? So let's say your child wants to go to the community college to save money as a household, and what if you want to go? You won't get free tuition because you're not a student who graduated from a California high school, But you can still go even if your TOEFL score is only 45, and you can take classes with other students to learn English. But if in your specialization, if you want to pursue performing arts, or if you want to do history or whatever it is, you could go to school with your kids. You know, I know people who've done that actually. But I want you to think of the community colleges because they are local. I want you to think of them as a resource for the community in a different way. Community colleges in California, there are again 115 colleges. 114 of them are geographic campuses, all right? So they're going to be close to where you live. They're located in population centers in the state. I want you, for your homework, to visit a local community college, not only to review its academic opportunities, which may or may not apply to you, but also learn about what other types of benefits that it can provide to you and to your family, all right? Whether it's access to the library, or whether it's to health fairs and community health screenings that might be free, or to music. There's actually, once upon a time, one of my favorite radio stations, KCRW, is NPR, located in Los Angeles. It used to be operated in the basement of Santa Monica Community College, right? And so at the college itself, they'd have in the basement, under, I can't remember what it was, they would have this radio station. And this radio station, for me, when I first moved to LA, it provided me with a door that opened into another world for me. New music, bands I hadn't heard about, types of music I hadn't heard about, cultural aspects that I hadn't been exposed to, and it was at the community college. They've since moved to another location, but that's where it started. USC operates, actually, this is not a community college, USC, University of Southern California, is definitely not a public community college, but they also operate a radio station, which I listen to as well. It's a classical station. So there are many different things that a college can provide that go beyond just simply classroom, all right? Performing arts as well. So go to the college that's close to you. Tour the campus. Go to the library. Look at the different offerings that are not just for classes, but for different events that occur. Sometimes they have farmers markets. The one that's near us here, they have a huge farmers market on Saturdays and Sundays, and that can be a great way to get involved and invested within your community, whether you are a vendor or you are a purchaser, right? Spend time in the library. Go to the Commons social area, and we'll call it the Commons. That's a frequent phrase that's used when Americans talk about that particular area at schools. It's where everyone goes and just kind of hangs out, and it has a lot of areas where you can just sit and relax, get a cup of coffee, listen to different conversations, get directories of information, etc. So go to the Commons or social area and or request a campus tour in the admissions office. If you go to the admissions office, they also oftentimes have student tour guides who might be multilingual. So let's say your English isn't strong enough and you're not feeling confident enough to receive a tour in English. They actually might have someone who is fluent in Spanish or Arabic or Italian or Vietnamese or what have you, who is able to give you an introduction to this wonderful community resource known as your community college campus. So that's what I'd like you to do for your homework. I want you to get out of the house and take your kids, if you have kids, to the college. I think it is critically important that we set an expectation for our children that their education doesn't end in high school. Their education will continue and it will never end. I think that's an excellent obligation, expectation, I guess, that we place upon our kids, because that will be something that will reap benefits for them throughout their life. Okay, so that's your homework assignment, all right? Next, we will be coming together again virtually through our platforms next Sunday, September the 15th, 11:30 a.m. until 12:30 p.m. We'll be meeting here again and discussing various aspects of TOEFL and how it can benefit you and things that you might need to know. So On behalf of everyone here, I'm again Whitney, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. I want to encourage you in the work that you're doing. It's challenging, it can be discouraging, but it will be worth it. It can change your life, and I know that sometimes it gets rough, but hang in there, hang in there. It's gonna be worthwhile for you, I know. So thank you for being here today, and on behalf of everyone, I'd like to say, may peace be with you.